There are mysteries that are not born from silence. They are silence itself observing us. Every night when the sky fades in depth and the wind slows down, a look silver lights up above us. The moon, so close that it seems to hear our thoughts, and yet so distant that it seems to hide yours. Since the beginning of time, humanity has looked at it with the same question in its eyes. Who put you there? Would you be a fragment torn from the earth, or an ancient witness positioned with precision to monitor the awakening of our species? Every tide that rises, every seed that germinates, every dream that blooms in the dawns, everything responds to your invisible call. She regulates the oceans and the blood, women's cycle and men's sleep. It's as if something in her knows intimately the moment that pulses within us. But there is something that few realize. When astronauts stepped onto its surface for the first time, they only expected dust and rock. They found metallic silence, an echo that seemed unnatural, as if the body of the moon resounded inside like a hollow bell. And there was an old suspicion, and if the moon is not a natural body, but a construction, a sentinel left by ancient intelligences, around the world, ancient cultures already told similar stories. For the Sumerians, the moon was the eye of the gods. For the Mayans, a sacred vessel who sailed between worlds. For Tibetan monks, a celestial mirror that returns humanity its own forgotten light. What if all these narratives, spread across time and the planet, were trying to tell us the same thing? That the moon is not just a star, but a portal, a point of connection between matter and spirit, between the visible and what still refuses to be born in words. If you feel like certain things are no coincidence, maybe this video is what you needed to hear. Because in the next few hours we will follow a trail that unites science, archaeology, and spiritual memory. Let's question the official story and touch on what was always said to be untouchable. The moon, that mirror suspended in the void, perhaps doesn't just reflect the sun, perhaps it reflects the mystery of the human soul itself. Before delving into the mysteries, we need to look at what science tells us, or thinks to tell us, about the moon we know. According to modern consensus, it was born about 4.5 billion years ago, when a Mars-sized body called Theia would have collided with early Earth. From this collision, dust and fragments rose into space and slowly coalesced into orbit, forming our natural satellite. An elegant, logical narrative, but still full of orbital holes, because, interestingly, none of the samples brought back from the Apollo missions exactly match with the chemical composition of the Earth, nor with the type of impact that such a theory would require. Even so, the moon remained there, patient, watching us mature. She is the reason why the oceans breathe, why the tides rise and fall with the cadence of a planetary heart. Without it, perhaps the Earth would be just a wavering, unstable desert, unable to sustain life. Delicate choreography of life. The moon stabilizes the axis of our planet and, therefore, also stabilizes the seasons, the climate, the rhythm of ecosystems. It is a silent guardian of earthly harmony, and in a way, of our own existence. But it's not just biology that dances around you. The entire human being is sensitive to its presence. From birth, our physiology and our unconscious follow the lunar rhythm. Sleep, hormones, intuition, everything seems to fluctuate depending on its phase. On full moon nights, crime increases, births accelerate, and emotions become raw tides. Therefore, the ancients did not see the moon just as a star. They saw it as a consciousness. In archaic astrology, she symbolizes the sacred feminine, the unconscious, the mirror of internal waters. Each lunar cycle is a reminder that everything is born, grows, declines, and is reborn. And, yet the more science tries to describe it, the more it escapes definition. Its rotation is perfectly synchronized with the Earth's orbit. That's why we always see the same face. A chance so exact that statistically, it borders on impossible. As if someone had adjusted the compass of creation with watchmaker's precision cosmic. Furthermore, the apparent diameter of the moon is identical to that of the sun as seen from Earth, allowing perfect eclipses. Two bodies of different sizes and distances creating a unique visual coincidence in the entire solar system. Coincidence, or calculation? The moon appears to have been placed in just the right place to balance light and shadow, day and night. reason, and mystery, as if his presence were not a mere product of chaos but a hidden signature within the order. And interestingly, it is also the first mirror in which humanity saw itself from the outside. When man set foot there in 1969, he looked back and saw the blue earth suspended in the dark, and understood a moment the fragility of the home that generated him. But there is something that science rarely admits. The more we study the moon, the more it seems to behave like something that was made to be there, as if it had a purpose, a functional and symbolic balance that goes beyond the astronomical chance. And it is precisely at this point that the border between the known and the unspeakable begins to blur, dissolve, because, if the moon is so essential to life, who guaranteed it would be here? When man finally reached the moon, he hoped to find answers. But what he discovered were even deeper questions. During the Apollo missions, modules landed, drilled into the ground, left sensors and controlled explosives to measure lunar tremors. When these charges detonated, the result baffled NASA. The moon sounded for hours, like a metallic bell, a vibrant, prolonged echo, impossible to occur in a common solid body. Scientists called this moon ringing, and so a suspicion was born. Perhaps the moon is not entirely massive. Perhaps it has internal cavities or something more enigmatic, a hollow structure. The anomalies don't stop there. The moon's average density is surprisingly low, about 3.3 gxm3, very smaller than that of Earth. This means that it is strangely light for its size, as if it were made of less dense material or of empty spaces. Furthermore, their craters have uniform depths, even when the diameter varies enormously. Giant but shallow craters, as if something extremely resistant prevented them from penetrate deeper. And the most curious thing, under some of these regions, seismographs recorded metallic echoes, reverberation patterns similar to those of artificial alloys. A coincidence? Or a technological signature lost billions of years ago? For decades, these anomalies were catalogued but rarely explained. Some engineers, such as Vassin and Sherbakov, published the hypothesis in the 1970s that the moon could be a colossal ship, a hollow structure covered by a crust of debris, a camouflaged shell that protects an internal base. At the time, the theory was ridiculed, but much of the data collected on the Apollo missions has not yet been satisfactorily reconciled with the traditional impact model. There are gaps in the samples, inconsistencies in gravitational measurements, and a silent scientific that bothers us to this day. And there are also the strange lunar lights, recorded centuries ago by astronomers and independent observatories, flashes, movements, transient shadows that cross the surface, as if something up there was still active. In 1968, NASA itself catalogued hundreds of these phenomena, calling them transient lunar phenomena. But the official explanation remains vague. Gases, electrostatic dust, solar reflections. Nothing that completely convinces anyone who observes carefully. Now, imagine a body the size of the moon, positioned exactly where it should be, to stabilize the Earth, present a face eternally turned towards us, echo as metal when struck and produce inexplicable lights. How many chances would it take for chance to stop being chance? Many scientists avoid the topic, fearing falling into the realm of speculation. But physics and spirituality have something in common. They both recognize that not everything that exists can be explained. And when science is silent, mystery whispers louder. If the moon were natural, perhaps its history would be engraved in the stones. But what we find are surfaces covered in ancient dust without fossils, without signs of erosion, without traces of clear origin. It's as if it had been placed, clean, calculated, ready. And then a question arises that echoes from the earliest astronomers to the mystics of today. What if the moon hadn't been born, but was built? If true, it's not just a satellite. It's a message. An ancient technology silently orbiting, watching us grow, perhaps waiting for the moment when we finally understand that the greatest mystery in the universe, it is not in the sky, but in the mirror that reflects it. Long before science tried to explain the moon, the ancients already described it as something that arrived later. Among the oldest texts of humanity, the Sumerians narrated that, before the moon, The earth lived in darkness, and the firmament was pure silence. Only after the arrival of a new celestial body was the balance restored. On the clay tablets that mention the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the stars, the moon is called Nana, the eye of the god of the firmament, an eye placed in the sky, not born of it. Interestingly, cultures separated by oceans and millennia tell similar stories. The Lua would have been brought, lit, installed. The Mayans said that the moon was the canoe of the creators, a vessel that crossed the sea cosmic to stabilize the world of men. The Hindus, in their Vedas, stated that the moon is the mirror that reflects the mind of Brahma, the Cr. And in ancient Greece, Aristotle recorded reports of pre-lunar people who inhabited the earth before it existed. For these people, the moon was not a natural star, but the starting point of a new humanity. These cultural coincidences intrigue even modern anthropologists. How could people so distant share the same cosmic memory? Could it be myth or memory? Perhaps these reports are echoes of something that really happened when intelligence, ancient, terrestrial or otherwise, shaped our planet's celestial history. Civilizations such as the Sumerians, Egyptians, and Mayans recorded with mathematical precision the position of the moon, its phases and influences, as if they had inherited this knowledge ready. Who taught them? Andean shamans called her the keeper of mirrors, a symbol of memory ancestor. They said that during the night, the moon opens the portals of the collective unconscious, revealing fragments of who we were before we were born. In times of eclipse, priests believed that portals between worlds opened. The veil between the human and the divine became translucent. Coincidence or metaphor of a real mechanism, an energetic alignment that touches dimensions that science has not yet reached? When we look at these traditions together, a picture begins to emerge. Perhaps the moon is not just a physical body, but a vibrational key, a catalyst between worlds. Ancient cultures knew this and built their temples. Pyramids and calendars synchronized with your cycles. They didn't just watch her, they talked to her. They understood that their light, reflected, is also the reflection of human consciousness itself, the mind that illuminates, but does not generate light of its own. What if mythologies were more than allegories? What if they were coded records of a cosmic truth that our ancestors, did they try to preserve it in a symbolic way? Sumerian texts, Egyptian pyramids aligned with lunar phases, calendars. Mayans, y'all speak in different languages of a shared origin, something that came from above that lit up the sky, that made time start counting. If something inside you is awakening, stay until the end. The answer may be here, because sometimes what we call myth is just memory in the form of poetry, and what we call the past might just be the future trying to remember itself same. In 1970, two Soviet scientists, Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Shcherbakov, published a proposal so bold that for decades it was considered scientific heresy. According to them, the moon could not be a natural body, but a constructed structure by ancient intelligences, a colossal spaceship parked around the Earth for millions of years. His article, called "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?", described the moon as a hollow planetoid, with an outer crust formed by very high metallic layers resistance. They suggested that fragments and dust could have been deliberately scattered to mask its artificial nature. At first glance, it seems like fiction, but much data continues to trouble scientists to this day. The low density, the absence of a solid metallic core, the prolonged echo recorded in the Apollo missions, and the strange precision of their orbit. All of this defies explanation naturalist. Even the fact that the moon is exactly at the distance necessary to produce eclipses perfect is something that goes beyond mathematical probability. Could it be possible that a force, an unknown intelligence, placed this body at the exact point where your presence would make life possible? For Vasin and Shcherbakov, the answer could lie in a civilization before ours, perhaps non-human, who built the moon as an observatory, a stabilizer, or a cosmic lighthouse. They called it the Eternal Observation Station, an artifact intended to regulate the Earth's balance and monitor the development of emerging life forms. Other researchers, decades later, expanded on this idea. They suggested that the moon could serve as a cosmic data library, a repository of information inscribed in its vibrational structure. Modern quantum science begins to admit that matter stores information. If this is true, and if the moon was built, it would literally be an arc of memory universal. Of course, skepticism is inevitable. Many astronomers argue that all of these phenomena can have natural causes: density differences, random formations, gravitational coincidences. But the universe rarely repeats such perfect coincidences. And when coincidence repeats itself with purpose, we call it engineering. Think about it. The moon rotates in perfect synchronization, always shows the same face, balances the Earth's climate, stabilizes the planetary axis, and also maintains a mass compatible with the maintenance of tides. If it were an artifact, its function would essentially be that of an external heart, pulsating to maintain life, as if the planet had and received a cosmic organ, implanted by invisible hands. But why, and by whom, would this have been done? Some spiritual traditions speak of engineers of creation, beings of light tasked with seeding habitable worlds. Others mention advanced civilizations, perhaps remnants of a cycle before the humanity, who would have built the moon to preserve the memory of what was lost. And there are still those who see in it a divine symbol, the signature of a higher consciousness that organizes chaos into harmony. We may never know whether it was the work of gods, star travelers, or an intelligence still unnamed. But when we look up at the sky and see that silver disk hovering over the abyss, something in us recognizes it. It's the same recognition we feel when looking in a mirror. We know there is something on the other side watching us too. If the moon were just a wandering rock, perhaps its presence would be neutral, silent, without emotional purpose. But everything about her seems to carry a conscious symbolism, as if every detail of her orbit was a coded message. Through the ages, mystics, astronomers, and poets have noticed the same pattern. The moon does not. It only influences the tides. It speaks to the human soul. Maybe that's why so many civilizations have built their temples and calendars according to your cycle. It is as if, in some invisible way, it synchronizes not only the planet's waters, but also the flows of our own mind. In ancient traditions, the sun was the masculine principle, strength, fire, reason; the moon, the feminine principle, reflection, mystery, memory. While the sun illuminates the outside world, the moon illuminates the interior, that territory where our shadows and intuitions live. It is no coincidence that the collective unconscious, described by Jung, is symbolically lunar. It is the mirror of emotions, and perhaps the oldest instrument of self-knowledge that heaven offers us. What if this balance between sun and moon was not just symbolic, but literal? Physics shows that without the moon, the Earth would tilt, the poles would shift, the climate would become chaotic. Life, at least life as we know it, would cease to exist. It is positioned so precisely that it works like a cosmic stabilizer, a buffer between chaos and harmony. And the most enigmatic, the moon seems to respond not only to the laws of gravity, but to an aesthetic order. His cycles are poetry in motion, and all true poetry is language. Many ancient philosophers asserted that the universe speaks in symbols, not words, and that each star is a note in a greater symphony. If this is true, the moon is the pause in the music, the silence between the notes, the space that allows sound to exist. When we look at it, we feel something that no equation explains, the feeling of being watched by something benign and patient, something that has accompanied us since the beginning of time. First breath of the species. In some initiatory schools in Egypt, it was believed that the moon was the home of the souls, the place of passage between incarnations. It was there that the spirits purified themselves, reflecting their experiences before returning to the earth. For the medieval Cathars, she was the mirror of Eden, the reflection of the perfect world lost. Even modern science, without realizing it, echoes this symbolism. The reflections of sunlight on the lunar surface literally return a softened, filtered, less violent light to Earth, the light of consolation. When we observe the full moon, something awakens in us. It's not just beauty, it's recognition, as if she reminded us of something we had forgotten, of a common origin, of an ancient pact between heaven and conscience. Perhaps that is its true message, to remind us of who we are when we look up. Because deep down it is not the moon that revolves around the earth, but our attention that orbits around the mystery. It reflects what we have the courage to see and what we still deny in ourselves. What if the real secret of the moon wasn't up there, but inside us? There are stories that are not written in books but printed in the very fabric of time, and the origin of the moon may be one of them, an enigma that has crossed civilizations and religions, whispering the same secret with different accents. The ancient Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, those who descended from heaven to earth. On the clay tablets, they described the sky divided between gods, planets, and portals. One of them, Nana's Eye, was a luminous body positioned to observe the world of men. Some researchers believe that this description exactly corresponds to the function lunar, a sentry installed by celestial intelligences. Egyptian texts also contain echoes of this memory. In certain versions of the Book of the Dead, there are references to a bright sphere that houses the lords of time. The priests said that the moon was the throne of Thoth, the god of wisdom, and that his cycles recorded the flow of human ages. It wasn't a dead body. It was a living archive, a device where the vibrations of history would be stored as memories. Each lunar phase marked the breathing of the cosmos, and each eclipse was a pause, as if the universe blinked to remember you. Among the people of the Americas, the moon is also remembered as a visitor. The Mayans called her Ixchel, the Lady of the Rainbow, bearer of celestial medicine. They said that she arrived when the sky opened, and that her presence brought balance after a time of primordial chaos. In the Andean highlands, there are legends that the second light came to heal the earth from trauma ancient, perhaps the cosmic scar of a real or symbolic impact. The fact is that in each myth, the moon appears as a medicine, never as an accident. If we cross these narratives with scientific data, a disturbing convergence emerges. The Earth-Theia impact hypothesis suggests that the moon formed from molten wreckage, but more recent analyses show that the oxygen isotopes of the moon and Earth are identical, something unlikely if they had separate origins. This indicates that either the moon was born from the Earth itself or was composed of material from the same Earth. Origin, carefully shaped. In both cases, there is an implicit intentionality, a cosmic architecture that seems to want us to be brothers of matter. And maybe that's the key. If the moon and Earth share the same mineral DNA, they are not just neighboring bodies. They are parts of the same being, separated so that one could observe the other. Perhaps the moon does not revolve around the Earth, but around the consciousness that awakens within her. It forces us to look up, to seek meaning, to remember that there is something beyond survival. On clear nights, it makes us ask, why do we exist? And every question is an invitation to evolution. Perhaps the origin that time forgot is not in the heavens, but in the memory of human soul, the memory of having come from somewhere where the light does not burn but welcomes. And if the moon is the mirror of this place, then each phase of it is a reminder that creation it still continues, reinventing itself within us. We may never know with absolute certainty whether the moon was born from a cosmic collision or if it was shaped by invisible hands, but in front of her, this doubt becomes irrelevant, because what really matters is not the origin of the star, it's what it awakens in us. When we look at it, we don't just see a celestial body. We see the memory of what we are, fragments of light searching for meaning in the dark. The moon is there, patient, as if waiting for humanity to understand the message she always tried to whisper, that everything that exists is interconnected, that each shadow has its light, and that the universe is not a machine without a soul, but an organism expanding in consciousness. The ancients said that the moon keeps the dreams of the world. Maybe it's true. It reflects the prayers, fears, desires of billions of human beings and returns them softened, like someone translating chaos into poetry. While the sun teaches us to act, the moon teaches us to feel. She is the silent teacher of introspection, of pause, of beginning again, and perhaps that's why every time we look at her, we feel a mix of longing and reverence, as if we recognize a home we have forgotten, but still pulses within us. If the moon is a conscious creation, then it was not made to be worshipped, but to be remembered, to remind us that we are not alone, that there is intelligence in the cosmos and purpose in each orbit. But if it is natural, if it is just the result of the dance of gravity and chance, It is a miracle, because the chance that creates beauty is, in itself, a form of divinity. Perhaps the real mystery is not knowing how it came to be, but why it continues to fascinate us. Mystery, after all, is the preferred language of the universe. If this message touched something, for you, subscribe and follow us. Your soul may be remembering the path, and when night falls again, look at the sky, not to look for answers, but to recognize the mirror. Because maybe, just maybe, what we call the moon is the very gaze of the cosmos, looking through us.